Welcome back. Random Cardinal of the Week will return in March, but today, welcome to a special Black History Month episode. Over the next 3 weeks of February, we're taking a deeper look at African American players who may not be household names, but whose stories had a meaningful place in the long and proud history of the St. Louis Cardinals. Before we focus on this week's player, it's important to understand the broader context of baseball's integration and why these stories still matter today. From the late 1800s until 1947, black players were excluded from Major League Baseball. There was never an official written rule banning them, but a so-called gentleman's agreement among team owners ensured that baseball, which is often called America's game, remained segregated. In response, African American players built their own baseball world, which we now call the Negro Leagues. These leagues developed an incredibly rich tradition filled with elite athletes, unforgettable personalities, and remarkable stories of perseverance. Players traveled long distances, played multiple games a day, and endured discrimination and violence, all while performing at the highest level of the sport. Like much of America at the time, baseball operated under the deeply flawed Jim Crow segregation era, and for decades it stayed that way. That changed in 1947 when Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Robinson's story is rightly famous. His courage in the face of hatred has been documented in books, films, and classrooms across the country. But what's often overlooked is that the players who followed him faced many of the same challenges, and sometimes even worse, without receiving the same recognition. And that's especially true for the integration pioneers of the St. Louis Cardinals. Until 1955, St. Louis was the southernmost and westernmost city in Major League Baseball. The city had a long and painful history with race, dating back to slavery and, of course, the infamous Dred Scott decision of 1857, which took place at the courthouse in what is now downtown St. Louis. Racial tensions continued well into the 20th century, including events like the Fairgrounds Park riot in 1949. Jackie Robinson would later himself describe St. Louis as one of the cities that made life the most miserable for him, especially early in his career. And yet, despite this environment, St. Louis was also home to one of the most successful Negro League franchises, the St. Louis Stars. From 1920 to 1931, the Stars featured legends like Cool Papa Bell, Oscar Charleston, Willie Wells, and Mule Suttles, winning Negro National League titles in 1928, 1930, and 1931. Other famous Negro League teams of the era included the Homestead Grays, the Kansas City Monarchs, and the Pittsburgh Crawfords. But today's Cardinal of the Week made his mark with another historic franchise, the Birmingham Black Barons, who played their home games at the iconic Wrigley Field in Alabama. This man would become the first black pitcher in St. Louis Cardinals history. His name is William Henry Greason. Bill Greason was born in Atlanta in 1924 and grew up across the street from a young Martin Luther King Jr. As a young man, Greason enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, becoming one of the first black Marines in American history, and he served in the Pacific Theater during World War II, actually seeing combat at the Battle of Iwo Jima. After returning home from the war, and despite having no formal baseball training, Greason began playing professionally in the Negro Leagues. He pitched for teams including the Atlanta Black Crackers, the Nashville Cubs, and the Asheville Blues before joining the Birmingham Black Barons in 1948. If the Black Barons sound familiar to you, there is a reason for that. One of Greason's teammates was a 17-year-old center fielder who would go on to become one of the greatest players in baseball history, Willie Mays. And years later, Mays would describe Bill Greason as one of his most important mentors. With the Black Barons, Greason pitched nearly 70 innings with a 2.84 ERA, helping the team win the Negro American League pennant. In 1952 and 1953, Greason signed with the Double-A Oklahoma City team, and during the 1953 season, he threw 249 innings and won 16 games, numbers that caught the attention of the St. Louis Cardinals organization. On October 13th, 1953, the Cardinals acquired Greason, and he began the next season in their minor league system in Columbus. Many baseball writers actually believed at the time that Greason would be the man who would finally integrate the Cardinals. After the 1953 season, new Cardinals president Gussie Busch took notice of the fact that the team still had no African American players, and Busch ordered then manager Eddie Stanky to add a black player to the roster. Busch believed that baseball couldn't truly be America's game if it excluded black players, but there was also a business motive for his decision. Anheuser-Busch sold more beer to African Americans than any other brewery in America, and the fear was that if the Cardinals did not sign a black player, a potential boycott of the brewery could be potentially devastating. But ultimately, Bill Greason would not be the first. On opening day of the 1954 season, first baseman Tom Alston became the first black player to wear the birds on the bat, integrating the Cardinals 7 years after Jackie Robinson and after 8 other teams had already done so. Alston would play parts of 4 seasons for the Cardinals with largely mixed results, and sadly his name is unknown to most Cardinals fans. Then, on May 31st, 1954, the Cardinals called up Bill Greason to start against the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. Wearing jersey number 34, and surprisingly making less money in the majors than he did in the minors, which should be a reminder that integration didn't necessarily mean equality, Greason became the first African American pitcher in Cardinals history. He faced a Cubs lineup that included Ernie Banks, who was the first black player in Cubs history. The game ended up being disastrous. Greason gave up 5 runs on 6 hits, including 3 home runs, in just 3 innings of work. The Cardinals lost 14-4 in a 7-inning rain-shortened game. Greason would make 2 more appearances that season, including 1 more start. He finished the season with an 0-3 record, a 13.5 ERA, with 4 walks, 2 strikeouts, and only 4 total innings. That same year, however, he did throw another 191 innings in the minors. However, Bill Greason would never pitch in the major leagues again. From 1955 to 1959, he remained in the Cardinals minor league system, winning 43 more games. In 1958, he even played on the same team as a young pitcher named Bob Gibson. Like many black players of his era, Greason also pitched several winters in the Puerto Rican Winter League and spent a season in the Dominican Republic, which both were places where many black players of the era said they felt far more welcomed than they did in America. Greason retired from baseball in 1959 at the age of 35. But his life after baseball is where Bill Greason's legacy truly shines. Greason returned to Birmingham, which by then was known as one of the most segregated cities in America, where he met his wife and joined the 16th Street Baptist Church, which was a central hub of the civil rights movement and a speaking site for Martin Luther King Jr. In 1963, the church was bombed by the Ku Klux Klan, killing 4 young girls and injuring more than 20 others. In the aftermath, Greason entered the ministry. He earned 2 degrees and in 1971 became pastor of Bethel Baptist Church of Bernie Points in Birmingham. He used that position to support civil rights efforts and also remained deeply involved in creating youth baseball programs in the Birmingham era. Bill Greason turned 100 years old in September of 2024 and was still actively preaching at his church at that time. That same year, the Cardinals and Giants played the first ever Major League game at Wrigley Field, celebrating the legacy of the Negro Leagues. Greason, who had once played there decades earlier, threw out the ceremonial first pitch and was actually accompanied to the mound by Cardinal Hall of Famer Willie Mays. Reflecting on his journey at that game, Greason said that while it was special to see the Cardinals at Rickwood, it just wasn't the same back then. The sense of togetherness that comes with true integration simply didn't exist in the 1950s. Greason turned 101 in September of 2025, and as of this recording, he is the oldest living player from the Negro Leagues era. History remembers the pioneers, but it doesn't always remember those who came second, or third, or those who kept pushing forward even when the spotlight faded. Stories like Bill Greason's remind us of the darkest chapters of our nation's past, but also of the resilience, courage, and the power of perseverance. And that's a legacy that's worth remembering.
Once you make up your mind and see what's going on, know you can't change it, so you adapt to it and make the best of it. And that's what we did. We didn't worry too much about segregation, because when we get to the ballpark, we put their uniform on, go out and play, come back, change, go. And that's the way it was with us. We didn't allow segregation to stop us from playing, from using our talents and gifts for what we were there for. And it was a tremendous blessing to have a gift from God that enabled you to be recognized as such.